Welcome to Success Matters. If you're enjoying the series, please tell others and don't forget to follow and subscribe. You'll be the first to hear when the next episode is published. My guest today is Kalpna Sanders. Many successful CEOs climb the corporate ladder, meticulously planning their path to the top. But what happens when life throws a curveball and propels someone into the realm of leadership unexpectedly? Kalpna is no stranger to this phenomenon, as she found herself at the helm of a thriving organization entirely by chance. We'll learn about her initial reservations, the challenges she and her company faced when COVID hit the world soon after taking the helm, and the valuable lessons she has gleaned along the way. From humble beginnings to the pinnacle of executive responsibility, this episode offers a unique perspective on the transformative power of unforeseen opportunities. Kalpna, thank you for joining Success Matters. You were in the Cayman Islands earlier this week, actually. How did that go? And was that on business or pleasure?
Well, so been working with the Cayman Islands government for about 6 years now. So pre-pandemic, we had people over there and so on. But since the pandemic and so on, this is the first time we've been over.
Right.
So it's business, really. But I was there from last Wednesday till yesterday.
Okay.
So timing-wise, a bit jaded still because they're 6 hours behind the UK time. And I would say primarily business.
Right.
I had some downtime on the weekend and I went and swam with stingrays, did some snorkeling and swam with the starfish, saw some turtles on Saturday afternoon.
Oh, that's brilliant. At least you got a chance to experience this Caribbean, right? The Caribbean Sea that the Cayman Islands in. So it's lovely. And you're the CEO of a company called CITI.
Yeah.
So when we were preparing for this, you said that you're the accidental CEO. So how did this come about, and what does CITI do?
Okay. Definitely an accidental CEO in the sense that I joined the organisation some years ago, talking about 6 years, just over 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I came in for 3 months. So CITI stands for Cranfield IT Institute. The organisation has been around since the early sort of 1980s, so right. Before our time, Sanjay. So we were babies. So it does it was established by the government as part of Cranfield University to look at the businesses that were at the time being privatised. Okay. So anything with British in front of it, I guess. Mm-hmm. The British Steel, British Leyland, British Telecom, and so on. You get my meaning. Yeah, those companies were asked to kind of get together and understand how to run privatized business, commercial businesses rather than public sector. Okay. So there was a change that was required, and that change happened through a management kind of organization that were based at Cranfield University, mm-hmm. and they helped to establish and teach how to be more commercially savvy and understand the business world, change within it, and how to run change projects, programs, portfolios, and lead change. As part of that, and as the evolution of the organisation carried on, there was a management takeover in sort of management buyout in the 1990s, again before my time, and it became a wholly independent organisation. Providing change enablement and project teaching at master's level, right up to master's level. So it's still a university in our own right. Okay. And I took over the organisation, let's say 4 years ago. And that was accidental in the sense of my predecessor, who was living out in South Africa. We have a sister organisation out in South Africa. He was going to retire. He was in his 70s, mm-hmm. and wanted to retire and was looking for a succession plan and asked me if I wanted to take the business over. After a lot of thinking about it, really, I like to be on the back seat. I don't like to be front and center. So this was quite a different kind of proposition that I hadn't anticipated. And so hence the accidental CEO. I took it on, and little did I know that there was something called coronavirus that would kind of scupper things for a little while. But what we did just before that was really change the organisation around, kind of get it to where we were a bit more ready without knowing, because I believe in lots of different kinds of learning, including remote learning and remote working and so on, having worked globally before. So that was a sensible thing to do, and actually it stood us in good stead for keeping us going over the pandemic.
So when he approached you and said, "Oh, I'm thinking, would you like to take over the running of this business?" What immediate thoughts went through your mind?
Initially, oh my goodness, I don't think I can.
Right.
This has been going. This is a very well known in our circles, very well known and very reputable organisation, and I felt that I didn't have the credentials to be able to take it forward. Although I had done a lot of change work within the organisation myself, enabling others to do it was one thing, and then taking those decisions and leading the organisation on a different level and being in charge of the whole running of the business and just that decision making was just a little bit daunting to me. So I was a little bit frightened. I phoned my husband and then I phoned my father and kind of thought, well, I don't know what to do. I didn't have long to kind of think about it in a way, because he really did want his health concerns and so on as well. So he wanted me to make a decision sooner rather than later. He had been waiting for a long time to kind of pass or ask somebody to take over the business.
Right.
And he said, it feels right because you've kind of taken it forward to its almost new way of thinking. So it just seems like the next step, really. But I hadn't envisaged doing anything of the sort.
Right. So you were thrust from the back seat to the front seat.
Yeah, I think I was running the organisation to some degree in terms of commercial, in terms of having a hand in how each of the operating areas kind of worked, helping the organisation to find its identity again, because I think learning itself has become quite commoditized during the 90s and 2000s. So it was quite a different sort of proposition, really, than how it started. And people's hearts and minds needed to kind of shift thinking from quite an old-fashioned way of thinking, and I don't think he'd mind me saying that, to becoming a bit more present and accessible again, so people could really resonate with what we do and why it was important within business.
What was the difference you did then to be more present and accessible?
I think for me, it was leading by example. So we had lots of people within the organisation who had been here for a really long time, and they sometimes forget what the real world is doing.
Right.
And I think that's why it's so important within consulting to ensure that you have your finger to the pulse and you really do listen to organisations and understand people and how working practices have changed, but also how business and the way in which we do business has changed quite considerably. How people learn has changed. So there was a lot of things that changed, and I think we were still delivering in quite an old-fashioned way. Right. Although the substance of what we did was really quite relevant, the style and the delivery was a little bit antiquated still. So what I did was kind of propel that from old to kind of new thinking, and use the collateral that we had that was really good to kind of repackage in a way that was more relevant to today's world.
Yeah.
Well, I say this BC as in before COVID, not, we've changed again. The world has changed again since COVID. So again, we'd already been on that journey and done a lot of that. So it was really relevant. And actually we were, from being behind the curve, we were kind of ahead of the curve afterwards. So it actually did work tremendously considering what had happened in between.
Yeah.
So I think they could see that the leading by example bit, where I was going out and gaining success and new clients through having the right level of conversation with the right people at the right time at their pace, was really important. And that's what I kind of introduced more into the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it earlier that you became CEO, and then a short while later, this thing called coronavirus came along. In hindsight, was that lockdown period, was it kind of like a blessing in disguise because it allowed you to get things repackaged and redone, or was it right? Did you feel, oh my God, what are we going to do now?
What's really interesting is that the organisation was a very successful organisation, but my predecessor kind of had that. So I almost had it from scratch. So financially, it was tricky.
Right.
And as a new director, new business owner kind of thing, we didn't get the support from the government that other organisations probably would have done.
Okay.
So it was difficult, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't financially really, really hard. But what we were able to do, as you say, gave us the opportunity to repackage things or think about things differently. We carried on working all the way through, and we were delivering work in the way, but we had fewer clients. So it was almost like starting from scratch again. But the good parts, the really positive parts, were that I was able to put my stamp on it. And I was able to make some of the changes that I really wanted to, but it propelled me to do that. Whereas I would have had to convince a lot of people to come down the technology road, to come down and do things differently, which, because they've been in the organisation for 20 to 30 years prior to, they weren't really on board with. However, the pandemic helped me to make my case for, well, didn't have a choice really.
Yeah. It forced people's hands, didn't it? A lot of organizations had that situation, didn't they? That the pandemic forced their hand to embrace new technologies and new ways of working because, as you say, it was do or die. Otherwise, you had no business left. So the timing was kind of probably okay now when you think about it, but I can imagine it must have been very, very stressful when the pandemic hit you.
Yeah, and I think we were prepared because we were already doing remote learning, and so with Cayman Islands, but we're in New York, in throughout the world with other organisations, with pharmaceutical companies and National Grid out in Boston. There's a lot of work that we started to kind of pull together and do in a remote kind of way as well. So this didn't feel alien to us, whereas other people, our competitors probably, were a little bit they were the rabbit in headlights, and they were a little bit, oh no, we didn't want to do this, and now we're having to, otherwise we won't survive. So we were probably, a bit ahead of the game when it came to that kind of thing. So actually, we were okay.
Something we touched on as well when we were preparing was imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Did you suffer imposter syndrome?
I still do.
You still do? Okay.
I'm not going to sit here and lie. Sometimes I sit here and think, am I going to get found out?
All right.
There are things that I don't know, and I am not somebody who will pretend to know it. And I think that's probably a strength to some degree. I'm very happy to sit there, even though I know a little bit about certain things. I won't try and blag my way through. I am a very curious person, not strange, although some might say I am a bit quirky, but a little bit more kind of inquisitive about how. So I'm really lucky. I have a really wonderful team around me, and I have lots of people who know more within certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've changed the business around, so we're not hierarchical in any way. So everyone in my team leads in their own capacity, in their own environment, and I take direction from them. My biggest job within the first couple of years of taking the organisation over was to strip the hierarchy completely and empower everybody to be the leaders within their field.
Right.
And we can only make informed decisions and safe decisions through listening to the right people within the roles who actually do those roles on a day-to-day basis and know more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, our structure is me in the middle. It's more planetary, really, with everybody else, and I go to them for their expertise.
Okay.
So I'm very happy with that.
And that helps with the imposter syndrome, I assume.
It does. It doesn't stop me from being in places sometimes and thinking I'm not should I be here?
Yeah.
It doesn't stop me, but what it has sometimes done for me is held me back a little bit. I don't like to be front and center.
Right.
They've asked, I get asked to talk. I mean, I'm being asked to talk for the NHS they're going through massive change at the moment. They're one of our clients,
Mm-hmm.
a huge client, as you can imagine. Lots of change happening within organisations like that. And it's not about one thing in one place. It's about trying to bring people together. And I think my strength is bringing people together. My strength isn't knowing everything. It's to kind of bring people together. But I get asked to talk at these events. And sometimes I listen to other people who seem so much more polished than I do.
Yeah.
And then I sort of look around and think, I don't know if I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it comes in.
Mm-hmm.
My thought processes are different as well. I think I'm not into power.
Right.
I'm not into, exerting any authority over anything because people are different, situations are different, the landscape's different in different areas. Globally, there's difference. What I do is probably embrace difference.
Okay.
And I think in a funny way that stands me in good stead to actually be a good leader because I listen
Mm-hmm.
to what other people are saying about their experience and their environment. I really lend myself to the organization, become an extension of that organization and really try to understand the subcultures.
Right.
And that to me is the interesting piece. You can't make change happen to people. They've got to want it and they've got to kind of lead it and embrace it themselves. And they're the ones who are going to live and breathe it. So who am I to go in and tell them what to do?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
collaboratively we can.
as you were talking there as well, I was just kind of imagining the scene where you've been asked to stand up in front of, I don't know, 1,000 people. And what goes through your mind when you've just heard someone who's like got the audience eating out of their hand and you're about to go and speak on stage in front of these people? How do you deal with that imposter syndrome and put it back in its box?
Humor.
Okay.
I tend to use humor. I tend to be really authentic. I think I'm not going to be anybody else but myself. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and you're not going to resonate with everybody all of the time.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of acceptance around understanding your own arena, understanding that you know what you know. I know about people, but not every person, but generic kind of rules. I know about how to lend my ear to, different kind of issues and problems. I'm not a problem solver, but what I can do is coax really out what the real problem areas are. When I'm up on the stage, you can read the room,
Mm-hmm.
and you can look at the dynamics within a situation. And I've managed, you all know this anyway from, backgrounds and so on, that we're always either on the stage, doing some sort of performance or dancing or doing this or doing that. So I've always kind of been up there and doing things.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm comfortable in my own kind of way of doing it. There isn't a right or a wrong. And I don't think people are as formal anymore. So I think my style probably lends itself a bit better now than it may have done in previous times. My face wouldn't have fit years ago. And now I think it does a bit more.
Yeah, that's a good point there about the formality of it, because that's often what holds people back, right? Because they don't think they're good enough, or they can't talk in a particular way or kind of present themselves in a particular way. Whereas, as you said, things have changed now, which is all for the better. Yeah, for the better, definitely.
And the other thing is, you can use humour and you can use, and actually people really welcome that. The authenticity is really quite important to me. So I think that's why I can do it. And actually afterwards, people say, we really enjoyed your talk, because it wasn't like everybody else's. And actually that throughout the years has now meant that I feel a little bit more confident doing it. In fact, I get asked to host things because they know it's going to have a little bit of humour in it. They know it's going to be real, and it's not scripted.
Yeah, being all your authentic self is probably the key out of that, isn't it? Just to be yourself, and you'll make that connection.
Absolutely. As I said, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, because some people want something different. So, and I think I'm okay with that. So I'm battling it. I'm trying hard to kind of understand that it's okay not to know everything and not to be, I don't know, I've just tried to be myself, really.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, as you know, the title of this podcast is Success Matters. So what does success mean to you, Kalpna?
I think it means positive results, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. Success is about being positive, realistic positive, not, thinking, not changing the world all in one go, but doing your bit to enable people and others. So for me, the positive mental attitude, the real kind of understanding that success means different things to different people. People are motivated in different ways depending on what's important to them in their life, in their point in life, and their situation and their experiences and where they come from, and how they've been shaped and molded throughout their lives and their experiences. So no two people within the same organization will have the same experience, and it's really important that we understand that success isn't one thing, and it shouldn't be measured just by wealth or just by physical activity or by career or material objects or anything like that. Understanding what motivates and what's making people tick is really more important. And I think for me, being the accidental leader kind of thing is a measure of success to some people, and I get quite embarrassed when people say to me that oh, she's my boss, or she's the head, and I get a little bit embarrassed by it, because I think it doesn't matter. It's just a title. We're all kind of in this together, for the success of all of us. Success breeds success. So a positive attitude when you go into organizations, listening to what that success looks like for those people or that organization, or how they measure it, is more important. For me, it's just not, it's about making an impact. It's about living my purpose.
Right.
But not and being positive, but not about, finances or about, I don't know, it might be very different to other people's thinking
Yeah.
about success.
And what you just said there, I mean, that's the whole reason for this podcast series is to explore
Ah, wow.
what success means to different people, because it is fundamentally different. And
It is.
so many, so many of my speakers have come out with things that I wouldn't have thought of as being measures of success or what success means, but it's been really enlightening for me, and I'm hoping enlightening for everyone that listens or participates in this podcast.
For me as well, designing my own life
Mm-hmm.
is my success.
Right.
So I'm in it, but then I was doing this before being the leader of this organization, and I kind of designed my own kind of life. So if things didn't fit into my lifestyle, where it's really demanding, and some people say about working all the hours and everything else. For me, it is all about balance, and it's the equilibrium of life. I see the world in that way. Everything is unfair if you want to perceive it that way. Life is unfair. We're all born with inequalities to some degree, but it's about how you portray yourself, what you can take the strengths of what you have within you and how you've been brought up, your cultural differences and everything, and make them into a positive. And then be open enough to listen to how other people have experienced and learned throughout their lives, which might be really different. And that whole juxtaposition, that whole collaboration, learning from each other, all of that kind of stuff is really what kind of gets me, makes me happy. It really does. It's not about I am just family oriented and I've had it before. I could have done a career, but I chose to look after my family at home. I get that a lot.
Well, as in that, therefore, there's something not right with you because you didn't choose that.
Yes,
Okay.
I didn't choose that.
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of comparisons and there's a lot of stuff that happens. I just let it go. People can live their lives and I can live mine. I don't intrude on everybody else's and I don't expect the same. People judge or people but people don't really know what's going on under the surface of what people live. They only show and portray what they want to. So for me, positivity is really important, and having some sort of self-assurance that actually, every day I go to bed at night knowing that I've done the best I could possibly do. Doesn't make me perfect, because nobody is. There's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, inner peace and understand. Sound like Kung Fu Panda, don't I, or something? Sorry.
It's very zen, inner peace.
It is. And I think that there's something maybe cultural there, that I've been brought up in that environment where those things are important. But I've also been brought up in an environment where you're kind of prized up against each other and you're kind of made to achieve so that it looks good for the family. But I just didn't really get involved in any of that.
Right, yeah.
So I've kind of kept myself quite quiet in my family, funny enough. People don't believe that at all.
No.
But I come from a vibrant family, as you know.
You do indeed, yes.
And so for me, I'm very happy. I mean, I have a little inner joke of my own, which is I'm one of 6. So I call myself the elusive number 2.
Okay.
Which you can be perceived in many different ways. And in my warped little humorous mind, it is that I am the elusive number 2 that nobody knows is there, but then all of a sudden it's like, ta-da!
It suddenly dawned on me what the number 2 could mean.
Yeah. The rebel with the rebel without a cause, really, or with a cause, whichever. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's cool. And coming from we know each other through family, and
We do.
Not only are you one of 6 siblings, but on your father's side, it's a big family as well, right? So I can imagine, the amount of, I don't know, juxtaposition was the word you used earlier, and that I thought was a really powerful word, because growing up in a Indian culture and the British culture at the same time, in amongst that being one of six, in amongst that being part of a very large family, extended family. I was going to use the word clan, maybe clan is the right word, and that all has a role to play, doesn't it, in how you are.
It does, but also you learn. I mean, so with me when I was younger, I was very observant,
right,
as a child, and very quiet, but very observant. And I think that held me in really good stead. And actually, I use those skills now, so observing people, because it's not about who talks the loudest. It's about when you have something important to say, people listen? Or if you talk a lot, people just go, there they go again.
Yeah.
So it's really important to choose wisely what you kind of lend yourself to, because you can spread yourself too thinly. Otherwise, you can be too much of a people pleaser. And all of these things these are all of the things I think that I'm talking about when I'm saying about balance and equilibrium, about positive thinking, about positive, positive role modeling, behaviors. All of these sorts of things are really important to me, because my father was always a very quiet person.
Yes.
In the family. Yet when he spoke, everybody just silenced and they'd listen.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, there's something about not talking too much. It's about having the right things to say and not being involved in everything, but choosing the right things to be involved in.
Right.
So same with as a leader and as success. Success comes from not trying to be all things to all people and all things to everybody, but trying to kind of taking a considerate approach to what that means, and how would that be valuable in the world, and would it be valuable or not?
Yes. And does it serve you, or does it help serve others, or does it serve no one else? So one of the things I do is I ask my previous guest to ask the question for my next guest. So my last guest asked me to ask this.
What matters more? Success or peace of mind?
Peace of mind.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
It really, really does. For me, that is success. Because if you have that tranquility within your own self and the understanding of who you really are, it's not selfish. It's more about being at one with your own beliefs and thought processes. And actually, you can make better decisions as a leader if you have that position of calm within you as well. So I think for me, definitely, peace of mind is what I live for.
Yes. Yeah. And I think peace of mind also comes from when your values are all in line with what you're doing, right? And that to your point, it's kind of how we talked about. It's kind of the Zen principle, or whatever, the meditative type of approach there. So no, thank you for that. Do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me, I love words. I'm a bit of a wordsmith. I like writing. I like all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And for me is what single word would you say describes success?
All right. What word would you say describes success for you?
Positivity.
Positivity. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that, but I won't, because it's a single word.
Well, you can add to it now. You've said the word. Now you can add to it.
Like I said, it's accomplishment. So when you feel satisfied and gratified with I don't think I'm the kind of person. I mean, when I first started within the organisation, there was this whole thing about other competitors and what they're doing. I think one of the first things that I kind of said was, we can only be in control of what we have in front of us and how we conduct ourselves and what's going on here. keep looking over your shoulder and trying to be all things to all people means that you lose your sense of identity. And it all goes back to peace of mind and all what I was saying, really, that you have to be comfortable, and it's okay that so-and-so over there has more than you, or so-and-so over there is doing something similar to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's really okay. And sometimes when people mimic you, or they go, oh, CITI are doing this, or Kalpna's doing this, or so-and-so is doing that, it's okay. I write a lot of positive notes, positive stuff on every day on my Facebook and on LinkedIn and things like that. I try really hard to make sure that we kind of live in that way, in that authentic way, even at work. And a lot of people have started to do that on a daily basis now.
Yeah.
And I don't sit there and think, oh God, they're doing that. I just think, isn't it lovely that everybody's kind of bringing some sort of different angle, and if you can make a difference in a few people when they need it, then what's wrong with that? It doesn't matter who's doing it. It should be a collective. It shouldn't really be one person going, I'm doing this and I'm doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you use that as kind of like a form of journaling then? There's each day you're writing something positive and that's your journaling, or do you?
I do wild writing as well. So I quite like wild writing.
What's wild writing?
Wild writing is, it's become more popular, but I think I've always done it. I write a series called Reflections, and it's just for myself, really. And I jot down whatever's in my head. So that's why it's wild. It's not kind of considered. It's not anything else. It's not structured. It's wild writing. And if you look at it in a couple of days' time, generally you'll be able to come out with some stuff in there that can really be a point in time of what was going on at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it helps with creativity. So my team will tell you, oh God, she's off again, because I come out with really creative things as a result of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've experienced, or if it's a good experience or a bad experience in customer service, even at a restaurant or whatever.
Right.
It's kind of good to have some wild writing every morning. It's normally for about 10 minutes, if that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it just really gets out the thoughts that are kind of your initial thoughts, and they might not even make any sense to anybody else. So you don't share them with anybody, but it just really helps you to kind of decipher what's going on in your mind. I maybe should point out I'm an occupational psychologist, but
Okay.
so I do a lot of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite out there in terms of like talking and being and loving life and energy and laughing.
Yeah.
And it's really strange because when I do any kind of psychometric, I come out as an introvert.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's because of the cultural side of how I've been brought up, where you have to perform and do and be, and you know how to talk to different people, and you've learned that through, watching other people, and that's what culturally is expected.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, on my natural side, I would say that I'm very like my father, where I'm quite quiet internally, and I need my own time, and I need nature, and that's what I need.
Yes.
So I balance the two quite a lot.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And maybe that's where the imposter syndrome comes from, is that introvert versus extrovert battle, if you like.
Piece, yeah.
Yeah, the performance piece, exactly, the performance piece.
And it's not me naturally, so
yeah,
that's not my natural stance. So yeah, I struggle with doing speeches or anything like that on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
So in a family situation, I don't want to do that. I allow my old. Luckily, I can hide behind my older sister and let her do it. And I'm quite happy to not.
Yeah, when you just said that, that's kind of exactly how I am. I've got two older siblings who will always kind of like take the mic or the center stage when it comes to that. And if I'm asked to say a few words, my gut reaction is crap. I've got to talk. It's taken some time to say, actually, you do this for a living, so just talk. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself of. But that immediate kind of reaction is, oh crap, I've got to say some words.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think my voice is so different in a work setting.
Mm-hmm.
Not because it's fake or anything. It's the way I think. It's how I am.
Yeah.
It's quite considered in its approach. And then when you get together with family, it's a different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not probably as good in that vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think I'm better when I'm able to kind of talk and think at the same time, not be bombarded. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me, it's as I've matured, I kind of realised the distinct differences between the two sides of me.
Mm-hmm.
Neither is wrong. It's just a time and a place for each.
Yeah, exactly. Kalpna, we're coming up to the top of the time now.
Sure.
If people want to find out more about CITI, what you do, or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do so?
Well, if they go on to www.citi.co.uk,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be able to find more information about CITI Limited, and we've got the other company, which is CITI Virtual Learning,
Right.
where we do lots of change projects, leadership, learning that people can buy online. But if they want to find anything more about me, then just look me up under Kalpna, Kalpna.
Mm-hmm.
Sanders, Sanders, and you can link in with me on there. I'm very I'm always on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's a great way of keeping in touch with people. I try not to use Facebook for work stuff, and I know people do, but I am a little bit, sort of keeping that a little bit more kind of personal with family all around the world. So it's important that there's the two sides, really.
So the website or LinkedIn is the best.
LinkedIn's the best, yeah, or the website, yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you. I'm sure really quick.
Yeah, it has. It's gone very quickly, hasn't it? I think it's one of those things that you were talking with a lot of passion there, and very great to have you as a guest. And thank you very much once again.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you. And good luck with everything that you're doing as well. It's great.
Thank you. If you'd like to find out more about how you can find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.